episode of The Accommodation Show. This week, I'm joined by a wonderful man called Ejim Curry. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Bud.
It's so good to have you on. I've known about you for quite a while. We haven't had a chance to connect and do an episode. Can you do me a favor and just, I know who you are, but maybe some people don't. So introduce yourself, let us know who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. I'm the Senior Director of Government and Corporate Affairs for Expedia Group, and that covers all of the brands that we've got, including those well-known Australian ones like Stays and What If.
Yep.
And I look after a team that covers across APAC, but day to day, most of my job is around ANZ, and that means that around 80% of it is dealing with regulatory matters for short-term letting.
Yeah, amazing. And it's such an interesting topic. So if we think about regulation, because in one sense, by nature, by the word itself, it has a negative connotation. So regulation, no one wants to be regulated. On the other hand, within business and within our lives, if we have structure, if we are told how we can do things, then we can then work within those structures and those boundaries to grow our businesses, invest, and have confidence in what we're actually doing. And would I be right in saying that that's kind of where you sort of fit in to try to help, not to regulate, but to actually create some structure that makes sense for the industry so that then we can move forward with a view of community, with a view of local businesses, with a view of everybody in mind? Am I kind of summarizing it right? Help me out here.
Yeah, sure. So, absolutely right. My role is to try and knock off the hardest edges of proposals that will see greater regulation for our sector. But I want to tell you something that I think is a miscomprehension or misapprehension about the sector more generally, and that is that big companies in particular are not averse to regulation.
Yes.
And one of the reasons for that is because it actually brings legitimacy.
Yes.
So we embrace regulation as a tool through which to give our sector legitimacy and also then to provide some guardrails around what expectations are. And we're pretty good at doing that globally. We've got really good tools which we use to try and help inform governments about what good regulation looks like. So yes, that's absolutely the core of my role.
Because we now have a bit of precedent and a bit of history and a bit of different territories that have had different things come up. So I know this is a mini episode, and that the issue is here, folks, is that we could literally talk about this for probably 3 hours without any breaks and still have a lot more to go through. But what's really important, I think, with these mini episodes is I want to give people a little bit of things to think about for 2025 and for next year. We've seen a lot of movement in Europe. We've seen a lot of movement now in Australia and in Victoria in terms of regulation. And it's literally, I'm talking to people and some people are terrified. Terrified of what's going to happen next and whether they're going to lose their businesses or not even their businesses, but it might be their investment property or what they thought they would invest in. But kind of working back, I want you to do a bit more of the talking because I'm talking. I'm just curious. I want your kind of insights as to what's happening and then maybe what people should plan for, how they can get involved and what they can do next.
Sure. Yeah, the uncertainty is terrifying, and that's why there are key things that you can do to try and mitigate against that. And when we do look forward, there's a couple of really key things which we're starting to see around the regulatory front, most notably and recently in Western Australia and in Victoria, where the passage of legislation which is actually looking at either regulation through a register in Western Australia and a levy in Victoria has also passed responsibility of the regulation of the sector back to local government. So that's where there's something to look to and to start with. There's an old adage, all politics is local and none is more local than local government. So when we think about what we need to do as a sector to try and actually mitigate against these things which I talked about, over-regulation or bad regulation, start at local government. Why that's important for two reasons. Local government are the ones that are a coalface and they actually get the majority of the complaints around short-term letting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they just don't have the tools to actually regulate in a comprehensive or good way.
Yeah.
But what we can do is this. We can recognise the challenge, we can empathise with their problem, and we can ask them to partner with us to push those governments that do have the power, state government, to actually do regulation that will work well.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of examples of that. So that's what I see coming in 2025. I see more devolution from state governments who've raised the white flag on wanting to try and deal with some of these issues back to local government who are ill-equipped to deal with it.
Yeah, interesting. So let's get more more practical for people. So people are listening and watching, and they might be anywhere in the world as well. So becoming active is really interesting. And when I finally sent my first sort of letter of concern, I think it was to a local MP, just saying, hey, where are we at with the regulation and what are we going to do? And that was through a form that Here to Stay or Astra sort of had put together to help facilitate that part. I think it can be quite confronting to know what to write, who to write to, how to find those people. What's the 3-step process to actually engage or to actually send a letter to someone, and what do we write in the letter?
I guess it depends on what it is you think you are seeking to try and address. I'm going to guess that when you were encouraged to write a letter, it was because there was an existing campaign or a proposal that
Correct.
was in works. And you'd have been encouraged to write to your local MP, that's a state member of parliament, because there would have been a proposal at the state level that would have had an impact. But going back to my earlier point, if you want to really start at the ground level, you go to seek out your local councillors. These are the ones who are experiencing the difficulties. They want good partners because they recognise the value that we bring to, for the most part, the value that we bring to their communities. But they know they don't have the tools. So start with your local councillors.
Yeah.
A simple Google of your local government area will also find in a council page and the names of the councillors that represent your local government area. Start with them. And don't write a letter, pick up the phone. Letters are better for state members of parliament. They're a lot busier. They've got much larger constituencies. This adage about all politics is local is very true for local councillors. They don't have the same degree of pressure on them. It's largely a voluntary role. They will be much happier to pick up the phone to a constituent who's concerned about a local matter.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so we go on to Google. We say, what is my local council? First off, if you don't know, who are the councillors? You click on the page and you go from there, and then you pick up the phone, and then the conversation would be, hey, I'm part of the short-term rental industry. There's a lot of things happening. We're super worried and scared because we're doing so much for the community. We really need some help and support.
Yep.
Is that pretty much it?
That's true. And look, there's a really easy tool to work out which local council you're in without even having to Google it. Look at your rates notice.
Yeah, right.
It comes from your local council.
And there you go. Or ChatGPT it as well. Look, I kind of feel that a mini episode doesn't do this topic justice, but I really wanted to give people something to think about, and also the fact that we get to talk face to face, it really does make a difference for our industry and what we do. And I think it's also important that if you are listening, if you are watching, that you get to see a face of somebody that is very approachable. So that's another thing that I know about you, is that if someone did want to approach you, if you know, through LinkedIn, or I don't even know if they can email you or whatever, I'm pretty sure that you'd be really willing to help and open to help, because I think you understand very well that you're only part of the whole thing, and it's actually the community that's going to make any kind of real difference. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely, yes. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I take issues that are raised with me all the time through people who want to try and find someone to connect with in Expedia Group, and I'm very happy to do that.
Beautiful. Look, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Folks, if you are tuned in on the Interwebs Meaning podcast version, so you are listening, then make sure that you leave us a review. If you're watching on YouTube, then give us a subscribe below. It helps us out infinitely. You don't have to, but you should. If you've watched the whole episode, then I encourage you to. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Bart. Good to be with you.
Thank you.